Hello my friends, once again I'm out and about and I'm in the middle of a hike. I've already covered quite a few miles, so I've ended up in this deserted farm building because I want to experiment with some double exposures. Now I'm not 100% sure whether everybody that watches this video is totally aware of a double exposure, so I'll briefly go over this topic. A double exposure is where you lay one photograph on top of another one. Now depending on your camera you can obviously triple this or quadruple or do as many, multiple exposures as you want, depending on your camera. For example, I'm using my Olympus Pen F, and I believe with this one you can do a maximum of 2 exposures, so that is a proper bona fide double exposure, 2 exposures, one laid on top of the other. So I thought I'd do some experimental portraiture of myself, self-portrait, using double exposure, because recently I started doing my journal again, and now I've been able to get some print from the major store where I live, because it's been a while since I've got some ink, because generally the ink you get from Amazon is not 100%, so I've been waiting for the store to open, so now I've got some ink so I can start working on my journal again. And like in my journal I like to have a photograph per story or page what I'm doing. Now I might do one page every day, I might do a page once a week, but it's kind of key to my journal that I've got a photograph. And every now and again I like to throw in a double exposure because it's a little bit quirky and you're never 100% sure of the kinds of images you're going to get. It's very experimental, and that's what I like about it. Obviously you can put 2 photos into Photoshop, lay them on top of each other and get double exposures that way. But that's all well and good. I've tried that before. It can be a little bit funky. It's a bit too precise for my liking. I like to do a lot of stuff in camera, so it's definitely good for developing like key areas of your photography, like design, composition, exposure, light and dark areas, and yeah, all in all it kind of gives you more of an expansive creative idea of how to fill a frame using 2 exposures. So I tend to do most of my stuff in camera, so it's easy enough to set up. I mean, this camera's from 2013 and it's got its own built-in double exposure, which you just dial it in. And then the other thing I like to do is to give myself a bit of time. I put it on extended, give it a 10 or 12 second timer. So you put it on timer, and that way it gives you a chance to get into position or to create some kind of movement in how you want to stand, rather than having to hold the camera at arm's length and click like that. So I put it on the self timer, and in this camera you can have 12 seconds, so that gives me plenty of time to get into position. And then I'll take the one photo and then I can move the camera around, or I can keep it in the same position, because I've got my little tripod. Last week I was talking about the Peak Design tripod, which I'm definitely going to invest in, but at the moment I'm sort of stuck with this, so everything's kind of ground level, so I'm missing the versatility of a head height tripod. But this one's alright, and it allows you to sit your camera onto a tripod. I mean, you don't have to use a tripod, you can use the ground or a fence post or a brick wall, anything, as long as the camera's sort of locked on. And then you can position the camera any which way you desire. sometimes I just have the self-portrait double exposure and leave the camera where it is, and I might just find two different body positions. So I could be close to the camera or far away, or I could both be symmetrical, so I'm on opposing sides, if you like. So it's all trial and error. You got to experiment. And for this one that I really like, there's this long path going from sort of north to south. So I take the first exposure facing one way, get into position, and then do what I'm going to do, and then I twist the camera around, face it the other way of the path, and create a different sort of posture or position within the frame. And that way it creates something quite quirky, unusual. And the one I like is what I've just done, what I just explained. I've tried a few other things, but yeah, quite happy with that. And also, once it's on here, I can actually start writing my journal from the photo on here, and then when I'm happy, I'll print the photo off and stick it into the book. So yeah, bit of fun. I'd definitely recommend getting into double exposure. Not every camera does it, so you know, you ought to look into it. And it's quite addictive. Once you start doing it, you can do it with everything: landscape, portraits, still life, and it just gives you something a bit different, something a bit more quirky and interesting. And like I said, it will definitely aid your compositional skills. It will give you an extra string to your bow, and it'll also teach you how to see and compose and consider the frame of your camera, and that's vital, and that's key to developing your photographic skills, becoming you know, a good photographer, or at least somebody who's quite expansive in their thinking and is keen to take their photography away from, you know, the normal run of the mill, which a lot of photography I see online is all very standard, and there's not enough expansive mind play, and that probably comes down to lack of knowledge, lack of knowledge of their equipment, lack of investment. You know, all they tend to like to do is to push a button. Whereas if you're serious about your photography, then you're like a sponge. You just want to soak everything up, and that's me. I'm a sponge. I've been for the last 20 odd years. There's something very magical about photography once you get going, getting into it. You know, find what you like and then just lean into that. Whereas if you're jack of all trades doing everything, I don't really think you get a good grip on what you want to really do. So if you're doing portraits, then just really nail it, really go for it. Don't try and do landscapes, still life, abstract, everything. Just try and nail down what you're good at and see where you end up. So yeah, I'll put a couple of photos up from doing my double exposure, and hopefully you'll like the pictures. Please drop me a mention in below, and also like and subscribe. That'll be great. Trying to build this channel. So yeah, this is the Olympus Pen F with a very small lens on it, which I love. You can just stick that in your pocket and away you go. Great for street photography. I've got 3 lenses for this camera, so I tend to use the 35mm for street photography. This is a very wide lens, this one, about 18, but it's good for urban landscape, that sort of thing. And you can pick these cameras up quite, well, I'll say cheap, but they're still quite keeping their price for second hand. Great camera. I do wish I'd have got the all black one now, but when I checked the sensor the other day, it's like it's new. It's immaculate. I was quite surprised. I've never had it cleaned. I mean, I've had this since 2013. Never cleaned the sensor, and it's still as good as gold. And I use it pretty much every day, this camera. So yeah, go and experiment. Try out some double exposures. Let me know if your camera does double exposures or not. And see you in the next one. Just lining up the shot. I've got it on 12-second delay, so multiple exposure times 2. I'm going to try and line up the horizon, then get into position, do me pose. Now I've just heard the camera click, so that one's sorted. I'm going to turn the camera around, face the other way, kind of line it up with the previous shot, so I've got the horizon on the same level. You don't have to do that, but it works quite well generally. And then when I press the second exposure, it'll be on the self timer, so I just have to get in position. I might go further back this time. Maybe look the other way. So my face is in the dark because I've got the sun coming from that way. And so my face is in the dark. And then the other shot, my face is in the light. So that gives it a bit of a twist. And might add a bit of interest to the photo. So basically that's how I've been doing it. This Olympus is such a good camera, you can do so many things with it. And to be honest, I keep thinking about getting a Fuji, but the more and more I think about it, this camera is so good that the focus is very snappy, very fast, so it's good for street photography. It fits in my pocket when I've got this lens on. The other lens is a little bit bigger, but all in all, it has got video facilities, but I just don't use it for video. It's just purely a camera, photographic camera, stills. I'm very happy with that. So looking forward to getting my peak design at some point, because then I can put the camera up head height and it's got a lot more play with that. But yeah, this is great for hiking.